Hello and welcome back. So the moment of truth finally came to fruition. We had our official draft last night for the money league that I'm in, and then some other additional chaos. So let's dive right into it. I was supposed to have two drafts last night, a Rangers League draft at 8 p.m., which I petitioned to try to change, and it was not able to be changed. And then my main league, the THHL draft at 9 p.m. That is my money league. That's the league that I pay most attention to and that I've featured on this channel. And then as I'm going into this draft 5-10 minutes before, I realized that I'm still in a league that I was in last year. I didn't even know that this league was still going on. I didn't know I was still in it, and I didn't know the draft was at the exact same time as the other draft that I was in. So at 8 p.m., I had both this draft and this draft going on at the exact same time. I had one on my main screen and I had one on my computer monitor. And then on top of that, I'm waiting for updates to try to potentially see where I'm drafting for the one that I actually need to pay attention to, which was at 9 p.m. So it was utter chaos. And, all the while I'm getting tons of messages from all three leagues. If you're in the chat for any of these leagues, you're in, a separate chat for each one of them. So I'm getting 50 messages at a time, plus YouTube comments, plus Discord comments, plus, just chaos, utter chaos. And so I'll quickly go over the Rangers League draft and the surprise draft. And this will be the THHL one is the one we'll spend the most time on today. But because you've all been paying attention to the videos and taking my advice, it's worth mentioning, how I actually fared in my actual drafts. This is not a mock. These are all real drafts. So the surprise one, this one I paid the least amount of attention to. On the right, you see the point valuations. It's a relatively normal point league. It was a little bit odd to me last year because I didn't have a lot of experience. I don't know this group of people. I don't know how they set this league up. There's a lot of waiting for shorthanded goals and shorthanded assists. And then there's, 4 for goaltending, 3 for goals, a couple, different little wrinkles here. Penalty minutes minus 0.5 is a little interesting. So yeah, this one I did not pay that much attention to, but I ended up with the first overall pick. I went McDavid. I ended up, I think, going Kreider second or something like that. Mainly because he's not, I don't really want him in a number of my other leagues, but he does cover a lot, including shorthanded goals and power play goals. So that's why I targeted him. Evander Kane gets me some hits, some shots, and he will probably lose me a little bit on penalty minutes, but he'll also get me goals. Rust and Caulfield, Yossi, Trouba, Gudas, Hakanpää. So a lot of hits coverage and blocks coverage here, even though blocks is not a part of it, but the hits are 1 point per hit. So that kind of, boosted guys like Gudas, Hakanpää, Trouba to a different level that they normally wouldn't be in. I stashed Marchand on the IR, ended up getting Kempe late, mainly for shot volume, and then Tanev for hits. And then the goaltending, I wanted wins because it's 4-point wins. So I went with Hellebuyck and Binnington, mainly because Hellebuck's going to start a ton. And then I figured Binnington, where I was at in the draft, he was the best available goalie to try to get wins. And he will probably get wins on that St. Louis team. So I'm not going to go too deep into this draft. But, I'll keep you updated if anything crazy happens, if I start sucking really bad in this league or what have you. But yeah. The Rangers League draft, this one is bonkers. It is absolutely nuts. So if you look at the right, the point weightings, you get 1 point for a shot on goal, 1 point for a face-off win, 1 point for a hit, and 1 point for a block. You get 10 points for a win from your goaltender and 10 for a shutout. On top of that, there's some other crazy weightings, 5 for a shorthanded goal, 5 for a goal in general. So this whole strategy, and I went over this with somebody who did a private consultation with me before their draft. They had a similar thing, and I basically said the exact same thing that I'm about to tell you now. I have this dashboard, this face-off targets dashboard that I created mainly for that consultation, but it actually worked perfectly for me as well. And this is not interactive on this thing here, but you can click through. This one is face-off leaders, so it's just face-offs from top to bottom, and then this is sorted by shot volume. So ultimately, with this team, I just wanted to do two things. One, I wanted to make sure that I drafted Patrice Bergeron first overall because he's 991 face-off wins and 4 shots a game, so he is the best available option. I was picking 12th, I believe, in this draft, so the complete opposite of every other draft that I've had for actual drafts. And I needed Bergeron because he is the best player in this league. And then the other part of it was I wanted centers at every one of my winger positions. So what I went through and did, I just went through and I drafted Bergeron first. Look at the fan points. I mean, he's by far and away, I think maybe Matthews is better than him, but other than that, and I wasn't going to get Matthews, he was the best player available, and so normally he'd be a massive reach in the first round, but for this league format, that's what I had to do. Then you look and you see center left wing, center left wing, center left wing, got 3 of those. I just went through the entire list of centers and just picked up anybody with dual eligibility on the left and the right. So Gabe Landeskog dropped to me pretty deep. Nugent Hopkins, Haula, those are my center left wingers. I got Giroux, Kopp, and Schmaltz on the right wingers. Kopitar is just a straight center, but he's very prolific in terms of face-off wins, 858 last year. On top of that, 210 shots, so not bad there. I did get one actual defenseman that I care about in terms of Yossi. He gets a lot of shot volume, so he was pretty high in the point coverage. He gets a lot of everything, obviously. And then this is only 2 defensemen. You get 2 centers, 2 left, 2 right, another winger, and then another forward. So I just wanted to make sure that every one of my forward positions was a center eligible player who was going to win faceoffs. Then you get the 2D, so I picked a good D, and then I picked a hits D, Radko Gudas, just because he gets 355 hits or 4.6 hits per game, and a couple blocks because you get points for blocks too. That boosted his total to a level where I could own him. And then my utility guy, another guy I'll put in one of these spots, John Tavares fell. I mean, I got him in like the 9th round or something. Like it was dumb. Eriksson Ek was another guy. I mean, nobody in this league was looking at the fan points, or they just weren't targeting centers, or whatever the case was. But they were not onto the league format. And this is the easiest way to win a league like this when people aren't paying attention. Look at all the just straight centers that I grabbed with massive face-off wins and the point coverage here. And then for wins on goaltending, Markstrom, obviously, for wins and shutouts, because those are the 2 highest weighted things. I did reach a little bit and grabbed Markstrom. I picked up Campbell just because I figured no matter what, if he's going to be the starter in Edmonton, they're going to win. He's going to get 30 wins. And so between the 2 of them, that should help out there. And then my G3, John Gibson, he'll get starts. So some of those might be wins, some of those might not be, but he won't always be in the lineup for me. But, if he has very favorable schedule, he's playing teams on the second night of a back-to-back 19 times this year, and those might be 19 easy wins. Probably not, but he has a better chance of winning games with that. So this was the chaos that ensued at 8 p.m. I was doing both of these drafts with different point weightings on 2 different screens, and it was hectic to say the least. And then all the while, I'm monitoring my other league, the main league, the THHL league. And if you remember back, I have mentioned them in the past. This was one of the graphics I did in one of the first videos. This is showing you how much I used to suck at fantasy hockey all the way through from all the way back in 2008 to 2018. And then I started implementing the strategy that I've been talking about on this channel and immediately skyrocketed up. And I'm closer to the top, at least at this point. And then this was another graphic I used in the first video, my own personal team history and the goalie strategy of not drafting a goalie in the first round, showing you who I drafted, where I finished, and then finally this is where I started implementing the strategy, and I was first, second, and then third. And then again, I mentioned that I dropped Demko before the coaching change. Otherwise, I might have fared a little bit better in 2021-22. So this is the league that I pay the most attention to. This is the league that you've seen on this channel before. And this is another graphic that you saw, not this one with our little Rocky cover that we made. We're a bunch of idiots in this league, so we have a lot of fun with it. But this is Delaware River, and he is my arch nemesis in this league. So I mentioned him in some of the other videos, the Elite D videos, the goaltending videos and such. He had the best offense last year. He won first place. I had the second best offense, came in third. But he also does pretty well with goaltending. This is his combined category coverage, and he was pretty prolific there as well. And to be the best, you got to beat the best. So I had a target on his back the entire summer. You could even make the argument that this entire channel was spawned out of the hatred that I have for this team, and the fact that he makes a custom t-shirt after he wins his championships and then broadcasts it to all of us. And it just, it did not sit well. So this is the THHL draft that ensued last night. And what you'll notice here, I have the first overall pick. Again, didn't plan that. That's just how it happened. Perfectly happy taking Connor McDavid. So I had quite a bit of time to just sit back and watch the draft take place. Now you see the usual things happening in the first round. Somebody took Kaprizov ahead of Makar, and then Makar goes. And then what you see here is two things. One, this player, Lake Mohawk Moose, he did find my channel. I don't know if he saw the video. I'm guessing he didn't, because he took a goalie in the first round. And then the other thing is, this is the funny part. So this is Portland Rivercats. He did this at 4th overall last year, and he went back to the well with Vasilevsky again in the first round, and he must not have seen that video, the first one that we did on the channel, Don't Draft a Goalie in the First Round, because I specifically pointed him out and told his story to you as a cautionary tale not to do this. And I was laughing pretty hard when he went ahead and did it again. And so, yeah, pretty funny there. And then, obviously we mentioned that these were the 3 goalies that were taken in the first 3 rounds last year. This year, for some reason, Jake Ottinger went in the second round. But these guys are, to me, at this point, just knowing, what the strategy is, I don't have to worry about these 3 teams. Is the theory wrong? That's what we will find out over the course of the season, because, maybe I do have to worry about Lake Mohawk Moose. Maybe I do have to worry about one of these other teams. But, if you're picking a goalie in the first round, typically speaking, I'm not going to worry about your being able to challenge me, especially if I have Connor McDavid on my offense. You're not going to be able to keep up with my offense if you draft a goalie in the first round. Then, if you look at Delaware River, starts off really well. Dual eligible Mikko Rantanen, probably the best available player there, except for maybe Kucherov. You might have gone there, but he probably stayed away from the health factor. And then he goes back with Adam Fox as his D1, as the top 3 guys were off the board at that point. So he's following the strategy to an extent, although he has his own strategy. He doesn't need mine, that's for sure, if I'm the one chasing him. And then he comes back with Timo Meier, dual eligible, covers a lot of categories. So pretty decent there. Now, I went with Ekblad. He was the next best available defenseman. So I knew I had the first pick. I had to wait a while. It goes this way and then back this way. By then, all of these other good D are taken, but I still have a shot at Ekblad, so I'm going to go there and do that. I get Ekblad, and then I go for Pastrnak, a goal-scoring, 40-goal pace right winger with power play coverage and elite shot volume, 7th in the league in shots, if I'm not mistaken. So what you notice here in terms of my strategy, I get best player available, Connor McDavid. I go for an elite defenseman at number 2, and then an elite goal-scoring right winger for positional scarcity at the 3rd pick. Then rounds 4 and 5. So what you see in terms of my team, the dwindling goalies are, there were 9 goalies picked before my next pick at the back end of the 4th round. So just to look at the goalies, Igor and Vasi went in the first, Ottinger went in the second, then you get Sorokin, Markstrom, Anderson, Saros, Kemper, Demko. So at this point, most, if not all, of the goalies that were on my targets video are gone. And Jarry is the only one left, and I'm very comfortable picking Jarry. As I mentioned, he was one of the other, he was one of those 6 that was the elite targets for goaltending. And what I could have done, I could have paired him up with another goalie here, but who was left on the board? It was Jarry, Fleury, Swayman, Campbell, Bobrovsky, Hellebuck, Georgiev, Forsberg, Binnington, Samsonov. And there were guys I figured I could get later if I really needed it. And I thought it was more important to go after my number 2 D, my second elite D, and especially since John Carlson fell to the 5th round. That did not make sense to me because between Ekblad and Carlson, they are almost identical players, and I got Ekblad in the 2nd round, and John Carlson's sitting there in the 5th round. So, I'm looking at Quinn Hughes, Mackenzie Weegar, Darnell Nurse. Those are D3s in my opinion. Maybe Hughes is a D2, especially with the power play coverage. He does a lot in terms of just offensive production, but he doesn't cover a lot of categories. So I preferred to go with John Carlson. I would have loved to get Letang, but guess who took Letang? AC Delaware. So, and then he comes back with Evander Kane for hits, who was also somebody that I was looking at to target. And I could have gone that way with this 5th overall pick, but I figured it was more important to try to get this defenseman, John Carlson, who fell. He fell significantly. And then what you're going to notice here, this was the graphic I used in that 2 elite defensemen video from July. So I won the league in 2019 with Erik Karlsson and John Carlson. He won it with John Carlson and Letang, and then Hedman and Ekblad. And I, this year, ended up with Ekblad and John Carlson. So that's a good sign for my team. But then he also got Adam Fox, who obviously is a good defenseman in his own right, one of those elite defensemen. And then he backed it up with Chris Letang. So he's doing the exact same thing in terms of making sure he has 2 elite defensemen. And this is a strategy that he's apparently used for several years now, and something that I don't know if we've adapted it from him because it was a separate analysis that was done this year, but he doesn't need to watch my videos. He's doing the right thing as is. So rounds 6 and 7, what am I targeting here? So at this point in the draft, I have Pastrnak for goal scoring. He's my only winger. I need some more wingers to round out my forward group. So I go for goal scoring, dual position eligible wingers with 40 goal potential. So Patrick Laine and Cole Caulfield, I've mentioned each of them on the channel before. Laine was in the goal scoring right winger video. He should be over a point per game, should be over 35 goals, hoping for 40, and he will get 2.9 shots per game. He was 0.25 on the power play points per game last year, and I'm hoping for a bump from that with Gaudreau coming over. But his career high was 0.37 on the power play. So if he can be in between 0.25 and 0.37, that'll probably put him in the 25 to 30 power play point range. And a lot of those might be goals. Not that that matters in this league. It's a categories league. But that's what the thought process was for Laine. For Caulfield, you've heard it before on this channel as well. 0.675 goal per game average with Marty St. Louis as the head coach. That's a 55 goal pace over an 82 game season. So that's what I'm hoping for out of Cole Caulfield. At worst, I'm hoping for 35 to 40 goals. And on top of that, he gets 2.8 shots per game as well. So shot volume is above average with both of them. And then you add to that Pastrnak for shot volume, Ekblad for shot volume, who's around 3 shots a game, and then some guys that I filter in later for shot volume. I should be able to take care of that category as well. Now, as we move to round 8 and 9, here I'm looking for D3 and D4, and the main reason is because I know how some of these guys in this league think, and they will absolutely jump up to grab the guy that they want. And we saw that, you probably didn't see it earlier, but Jack Hughes was taken in the 3rd round, and I was targeting him really heavy. I wanted him really bad this year. I tried to hide it and not mention it too often on this channel. I didn't do a good job of that. But regardless, Jack Hughes went in the 3rd round to the crash line. He jumped because he wanted him bad. So guys will jump to pick players. And last year, Radko Gudas went 91st with the 1st pick in the 10th round to Zodiac Braves. So I know that other people are on to him, and I know that he's started in this range. He's starting to appear on their radar, and I don't really have any hits coverage at this point in the draft, so I need it more than anything else. And so what I was trying to do here, I was targeting Gudas. I could have gone Gudas first and then Werenski. It doesn't really matter, but I was hoping to get Thomas Chabot for my D3, and I've wanted Chabot for a while. But what I also noticed is that Toe Dragons is working off of Dom Lashishin's, I can't say his last name, his spreadsheet. And he drafted Dougie Hamilton way, way earlier, I believe in the 3rd round. And Dougie Hamilton has elite shot volume. So when you notice guys that should be going in this round for shot volume and they've been taken way earlier, then you kind of have to think to yourself, what can I get in terms of shot volume for this coverage? Because I'm trying to target hits coverage with Gudas and blocks coverage with Gudas. And let's just get right into it. So Werenski is a shot volume monster. So he was 3rd in the league behind Hamilton in shots per game, 3.176. You add to that my other 2D, Aaron Ekblad and John Carlson, and I'm looking pretty good for shot coverage right here. So, and on top of that, Werenski's career high was 0.31 goals per game. That was a 20-goal season for Werenski. So I'm assuming he will be between 10 and 20 goals this season, and he will still be above 3 shots per game. So that's why I went with him as my D3. Now, why did I go Gudas? You've seen this before on the channel. Hits per game and blocks per game leaders, he was head and shoulders above everybody else. So combined between hits and blocks per game, 6.1. And that was way better than most of these other guys. Ristolainen's pretty good as well. Trouba, I believe, was already taken at this point. Nurse definitely was taken by this point, so I couldn't get either of those guys. Could have gone with Romanov, but I like Gudas a lot better, and he gets about a 1.5 combined number higher than Romanov for this metric. So, you know, this is what I'm trying to do, and I mentioned this in the hits and blocks video. Try to corner the market for these 2 categories with 1 or 2 players. And you will see later on who I rounded out my hits and blocks coverage with. So as we return back to the draft. So this is rounds 10 through 14. Now we've covered a lot of this. I'm going to skip over a couple things here, but you know, I was rounding out my D. That was what I just covered. Then, you know, I will get back to goaltending in a minute. I'm sure your eyes are popping out of your head looking at this. But I went with Trocheck. So every year of the last 5, he has either put up 0.61 points per game or 0.91 points per game. And he hit 0.91 twice in 17-18 playing under Gerard Gallant, and then in 2021. And all of that was without Artemi Panarin. So those 2 seasons, his goal production was 0.36, 0.37, which is exactly 30 goals. Add to that a 5-year shot per game average of 2.45, a career high of 3.5, the year he played for Gallant, no less. And we finally arrive at the main reason that I chose Trocheck and jumped a bit early to get him, and that is his hits coverage at 2.28. So I was just thinking about hits with Gudas, and now I'm thinking to myself, I got to add to that a little bit. There's some quality centers, and you can look at them here. I probably should have gone with John Tavares. There's really no reason not to, except for the hits coverage. I don't know why John Tavares fell to the 11th round. It makes absolutely no sense. He was on my board. I was going to do it, but I wanted the hits coverage. So that might have been my death sentence if I end up making the wrong choice here. But that was the thought process. 2.28 hits per game plus Panarin exposure and PP1 exposure in New York. So that's what I was looking at for Trocheck. I then took a look at stashing McAvoy on the IR, which helps me add waiver pickups after the draft while also securing another defenseman for hits and blocks coverage when he's healthy. So on top of that, he will also probably get PP1 time if he comes back and feels healthy. So at this point, I'm feeling pretty good about my D-core. I'm feeling pretty good about my forward group overall. And then there's the goaltending. And yeah, let's talk about it. Here are the goalies, and this is the problem that I've had in this league over the last few years. This league jumps on goalies very early. As I mentioned before, 9 goalies were taken before I got Jarry in the 4th round. So that means that I couldn't push the goalies back the way that I was doing in mock drafts. That means that most of the guys on my G1 list were gone by the time I got to Jarry, and unless I went G1 and G2 in the 4th and 5th rounds back to back, which would have eliminated my D2 and hurt my offense, I had to get creative with my other goalies. So as I mentioned before on this channel, offense wins championships. I couldn't hurt my offense to try to secure goaltending, so I had to push it back. This same phenomenon happened to me last year. So if you're looking at the far right of the screen, those are all the goalies I used last year. Shesterkin was my ride or die, 53 games played for me. Demko would have been the guy to keep. I made that mistake. I've talked about it a number of times. I wish I didn't do it. Francouz was a very serviceable goalie for me. An elite backup on an elite team. I did try basically every other reasonable goalie in the league. I mean, some of these are not even that reasonable. Merzlikin's okay. Skinner, he actually played pretty well for a stretch there, and I could see him putting up some decent starts this year. No idea why I took Vanacek. Stolarz actually played pretty well last year. Mrazek, I don't know why I did that. Anderson, I mean, these are just streams. These are just one-day flyers on goalies. The next guy, I mean, I had Spencer Knight for 11 games, Francouz for 11 games, Merzlikins for 8, Gibson for 9, and he didn't win a single game of those 9. So I've had some bad luck with goaltending. So I had to go completely off the board and think a little bit differently about my plan of attack. Last year, my plan of attack was to ride Igor and try to win save percentage and goals against average because that was able to be found on the wire. And it worked enough to get me into the bronze medal game and win me my money back. But if I had kept Demko, I'm confident I would have been in the championship game and won my money, or won some money. Now, in this draft, I was targeting a goalie in the 10th round, knowing there weren't many options left. And my plan of attack was to get a tandem on a great defensive team because I have those back-to-back picks, so I can get a tandem without somebody sniping them from under me. But at this point in the draft, Swayman was way gone. He was gone in like the 4th or 5th round. As somebody's G1, which is a bad idea in my opinion. And then the only other elite defensive team that had a tandem was Los Angeles. And then I have Jonathan Quick in my queue. I'm ready to do both at the same time, despite the fact that I could probably wait on Peterson. And then 2 picks before I am about to pull the trigger, Jonathan Quick gets taken by the crash line. So I then have to scramble and rethink my entire approach on the fly. And at this point, I have to get creative. If you're watching this and you think, gee, data draft, you had Merzlikins there, Mighty Duck Mark will probably get on me about not taking John Gibson, but I just mentioned he lost 9 games for me last year, so I didn't really want to do that. Let me show you my thought process. So this is a visualization I did combining team defense, shots against, in blue, and then team save percentage in red. And what you notice is that both Toronto and the Devils were above league average in shots against, and Toronto got much better goaltending and therefore had more success. This line right here is league average in terms of shots against, and anybody to the left of this dark line, or a little bit gray line here, anybody on this side of it was above league average in shots against, and Toronto and New Jersey were both there. Now you see New Jersey had horrible goaltending. The only team worse was Seattle, and we talked about that with Grubauer. And by the way, Grubauer got sniped by Toe Dragons, who's using those spreadsheets. He got sniped, I think, in the 6th or 7th round, and I was very mad about that because Toe Dragons always snipes my guys, and he was the furthest away from me in the draft, and he still managed to snipe a goalie that I was targeting much, much later in the draft, no less. But I believe his 2 goalies are Swayman and Grubauer, so a little risky there in terms of, but yeah, I can't talk. I really can't talk. So anyways, the Devils' goaltending was the 2nd worst in the league last year. A lot of that had to do with Blackwood nursing an injury and then not getting vaccinated for some health-related reasons. And then after watching him keep the Devils in the game the other night against the Rangers, I was banking on the fact that he can return to form. So in his rookie year, he had a .918 save percentage, 2.61 goals against, and was 10-10 in 21 starts. Then the next year, he was a .915 save percentage, 2.7 goals against, and winning record at 22-14-8 in 43 starts. Then it went downhill for him for 2 or 3 years, depending on how you want to look at it. I watched him. He looked very good. It is preseason. I understand that. The only guy to beat him was Panarin, and then a bank-in shot from the point from Keandre Miller. So he looked very good. He kept the Devils in that game, and I think what I just noticed out of that is that he looks like he's healthy again. He looks like he's back to his previous form, and that's what I was hoping for. Not necessarily hoping for. I wasn't targeting him, but that was in the back of my mind when I made this pick. And then what kind of surprised me was that the Devils were actually above average in shot suppression, because you look at them and they gave up a ton of goals, and that was their death knell. But at the same time, they were suppressing shots, and their defense is getting better. So Hamilton is healthy this year. They made a couple trades in the offseason. Nemec is still in camp. He could potentially see some time. But right now, he's slotted as the 7th D, so they have plenty of depth. and they're improving defensively as well. As far as Matt Murray is concerned, the thought process was exposure to the Leafs' win potential and 9th best shot suppression defense, and he'll definitely get the run support as well on offense. So I'm of the belief that Matt Murray will be the 1A and that Samsonov will be the 1B. And in this draft, Samsonov went 9th round at 100 overall, and I ended up getting Matt Murray at 145 in the 13th round. So I think that's a little bit better value. And again, I'm just hoping for wins and that he kind of takes over the role of the starter or the 1A in Toronto. And if he can do that, he had a .910 save percentage last year, and he was showing signs of being his former self. Obviously, injury risk is the main problem there. And do I feel confident about my goaltending? No. This whole exercise is basically convincing myself that I didn't make a horrible mistake last night. But it was very difficult to not make that mistake when 9 of the best goalies were taken before the 4th round was over. So it is very difficult. You do have to be adaptable, and you have to kind of think outside the box. So what I was looking at was overall team defense and trying to get one of these guys on one of those team defenses and trying to get a guy who I thought would start as opposed to, or even at least a 1A if I could. So that's the way that fell, and I ended up with Jarry, with Blackwood, and Matt Murray. So we'll skip ahead here. Here are the final results, and what you'll notice on the right side, because I stashed McAvoy and I ended up taking Pacioretty with my last pick and stashing him on the IR, I was able to potentially throw them right to the IR spots on my roster and add Dylan Larkin and Phil Kessel. If you watched my video about deep value plays yesterday, you know why I targeted Phil Kessel. And Dylan Larkin adds some center depth, 30-goal pace, .97 point per game last year, around 3 shots per game, and about a hit per game as well. So very good value as a waiver pickup as he slid through the entire draft. I had him last year. I liked the production. I liked the exposure to the top line and the power play in Detroit. And I feel comfortable going back to that file again. Now, I also, if you want to just round it out, Clayton Keller, he's a .94 point per game dual eligible winger. We don't have plus minus, so I don't have to worry about that. And then I go for another hits guy in Tanner Jeannot later. So if you don't know, now you know. That is not my joke. If you don't like it, complain to Boomer on NHL Radio. But nonetheless, I do have pretty good hits coverage at this point. Like I said, Larkin gets a hit per game. Jeannot gets 3.9. McAvoy's in the 1.5 range. Trocheck 2.2. Gudas 4.6. So I'm starting to boost some of those stat category coverages. And then you look at AC Delaware River, and though he did find my channel this past Sunday, and that was 3 days before the draft, he did have time to find me talking favorably about his teams over the last few years. He already had a good strategy, and he didn't need my advice, and you can see it here. So center right wing, dual eligible, first best player available with the first pick. Elite defenseman. Then he goes back with another dual eligible winger. Then his second elite defenseman. So you notice he didn't take a goalie in the first couple rounds. He has his 2 elite defensemen. Then he starts thinking about hits with Evander Kane and potential goal coverage. And he pushed his goalies back to the 6th round. And I think he did a much better job than I did on goaltending. Connor Hellebuck in the 6th round is, very, very good. I was targeting him in that range, but by this point I didn't have any wingers. So he had Kane. I was targeting Kane. And then I wanted to go for wingers. Then I went for the D, and then I started to have to address goaltending. But he took Hellebuck in the 6th round, and that's pretty good value for your goaltender there. He pushed him back to the 6th round, which we talked about in that goaltending video. Buchnevich is a sneaky good player. Almost a point per game. Gets a lot of different... he's more of a two-way player than people realize, and I don't think that counts for anything in terms of fantasy hockey, but... still very productive in a very good offense. Then he comes back with Trouba, so he snipes Trouba off of me, so he might have seen the hits and blocks video. He also got Shabbat. Now, I could have taken Shabbat where I wanted Werenski, so he didn't snipe him from me, but he definitely saw that. I've had Rust before, and I've talked about him on the channel, so he grabbed him there as well. He went with Merzlikins, which is probably the better play. I was looking for more risk and more reward, I guess. As I think that both the Devils and the Toronto defenses should be better than Columbus's. I'm not 100% sure on that one. So this is a decent strategy from him. Rope Hintz, that's a very good pick in the 12th round. Kempe, Spurgeon, Bertuzzi, and then throwing a flyer on Cam Talbot towards the end. I don't like that defense exposure, but nonetheless, last pick of the draft, nothing crazy there in terms of risk. So yeah, this is how it shook out. This is my main competitor. I will be targeting anything that I can do to help make my team better so that he can't beat me. If anybody else in the league wants to beat me, that's fine. Just can't be him. So that's the thought process here. And also, I now have Connor McDavid on 3 of my 4 teams this year, and I obviously couldn't possibly have planned to get the first overall pick in 3 out of 4 drafts, but I'm glad I did. And when I'm playing against AC Delaware River last year, he had McDavid, and it made it very difficult to beat his offense. And as you could see with that previous graphic, he had a lot better offense than I did. So I'm hoping that same phenomenon happens in reverse this season for my team. Now, this will probably do it for this video. If you like any of the data visualizations you saw in this video, you can get access to them in the Patreon link in the description below. For $3 a month, you can get just the visualizations. You can also get my data draft pick planner where you can kind of map out where your picks are. Yeah, for $3 a month, you have access to both of those. For $5 a month, you get access to the visualizations as well as the community Discord server. It's been a very big help in terms of evaluating trades, evaluating players for the upcoming season, getting some news updates from people who watch other teams a little bit more closely. And that could be a very, very useful tool during the season to try to monitor teams that are playing out west that you don't stay up to watch, things like that. So if you want access to that, that's in the Patreon link in the description below. But again, I want to thank you for paying attention. Thank you for indulging my ridiculous league chaos nonsense that happened last night. Hopefully you got some entertainment out of this as well as a little bit of value. We will be back to our normal, regularly scheduled programming after this video. But thank you again, and I will see you in the next one.